So it's really a way to not write about that. For the people that did, so really low stack, or I guess I'm our director, so I think you were all the call talking about yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the 7th Annual Region 6 Higher Education Collaborative Summit here at Grambling State University in Grambling, Louisiana. We are happy to have you guys, whether you are in person or online. We're going to take care of a couple of housekeeping things, and then we're going to get started.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Dr. Kenyatta Shammer, and I serve as the Chief Operating here at Grambling State University. We want to say welcome and thank you all for choosing Grambling State University to host this year's summit. Here at Grambling State, we love saying that here at Grambling State, everybody is somebody. And so today, we embrace you with those warm words. So I have a couple of housekeeping items that I am going to share, and then we will move into our agenda. We have both persons in person and virtually. So this is a hybrid experience, and so we are some of the huddling that you have seen this morning is making sure that our online audience is also that we're dedicating the fees and all of the information. In terms of restrooms, if you go out these doors to your right, down the short hall, to your right again, and then the women's restrooms are there, or you can just walk through this wall. That would probably be easy this way, but that is not possible. But being too right, there are restrooms. There's also one, if you go out these glass doors to your left, or the glass doors on my left, and straight down the hallway. Also on the left, there's a restroom there. In case of emergency and we have to shelter, we will go out the doors on our right, down the stairs, and right in front of us are some rooms, and then that will be space to shelter in place. If we needed to do an emergency evacuation, the doors here to my right, to my left. It is so early, and my right and left, I am getting that all the time. Lord, I apologize. We would be out the doors on the left, and then right to your immediate left is another emergency door. then there is also a reserved section for conference attendees. Also, if you there are sandwiches, salads, entrees. If there are those that include free, vegan, all of those options are there. If you would like something a little different, we have our Tiger Express, which has pizza, wings, firehouse subs. It is access. And then for the internet, if you need to log into the system, it is GSU Tigers, and the password is capital TIGER, capital LAND, so Tigerland 2026 hashtag. So the T and the L are capital Tigerland 2026 hashtag. Are there questions that I might be able to answer? Do I need to do that one more time? The password? Sure. GSU Tigers, and then it's Tigerland 2026, and then the pound sign, hashtag. And the T and the L in Tigerland are both capital. Any other questions? Again, thank you all so much for being here, for choosing Grambling State University as the host site. We're excited that you're here. If there are questions that we can answer, I also want to introduce our safety manager, which is Jessica Malone. Both of us are here throughout the conference and can answer any questions that you all may have. Again, welcome.
Good morning. I'd like to introduce our first speaker today. It's going to be Janice Corey. Janice serves as the Planning and Preparedness Specialist for the Louisiana Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, also known as the OH7. She works in emergency management visit and supervises that review of emergency operation plan for all parishes in Louisiana, nursing home plans, and works with preparedness outreach throughout the state. She also serves as a tribal liaison to the Native American tribes, 15 in total, that call Louisiana their home. Outreach is one of our favorite parts of the job. Getting to share the Get a Game Plan campaign with people across the state is shared at all her speaking engagements. Mrs. Corey has been with Go.
Good morning. This is my 2-year anniversary in planning and preparedness today. So it's Jancy. Everybody says Janice, but it's Jancy. And I'm thankful to be here today. I was supposed to have my supervisor with me, but we're in the thick of planning statewide exercise with some major hiccups, so he had to back out. So a little bit about my love for this. When they asked me to come speak, at first it said 30 minutes. I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I can do 30 minutes. But I was a teacher before I left that world and came to emergency management. I got to start out in GOSEP about 3 years ago in public assistance, and so, which was kind of cool because when you're working with people and you're preparing plans, if you understand the other side of recovery after responses happen, then it's a little bit better as far as being able to direct people, making sure that they have all of their things in order, their memorandums of understanding, their contracts, and that they just have good blue sky working relationships. So they asked me to come. So I prepared this presentation is kind of going to talk about to the students, to the educators, and to the administrators. So that's who I am. I live in Baton Rouge, or Zachary, and I have 3 children. I'm a recent widow. That's a whole different world that I had to kind of put a lot of the outreach on hold for the last few months, just kind of while we dealt with those things. But I'm back. I love what I get to do, and I love to get to go and speak all over the state of Louisiana and work with tribes and parishes. I'll be in West Carroll tonight for a meeting at 5 o'clock. So anyway, that's who I am. I'm sorry Justin couldn't be with us, but they they apparently trusted me enough to come and represent the agency. All right, first slide. So I do work for GOSEP, which is the Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness. And last year, around this time, we underwent a major reorganization. We went from a director that was appointed by the governor to we are now run by the Louisiana Military Department. So our schedules changed, our leadership changed, and the direction of our agency changed completely. Without going into all the details of it, we have gone from 5 divisions down to 3. No one lost their job through this. We just reabsorbed things and kind of redirected people. So that's how we've changed a little bit. In my division, which is the emergency management side of the house, we go out and work with people. We're the how. We're not the doers. We just teach them how to do things. And GOSEP, unfortunately, a lot of people think that we tell people what to do. And you know this in emergency management. We don't tell them what to do. We're there to direct them. We're there to coordinate between our state, our federal partners, BOADs, and the business community. And I know that Jim Williams is going to be one of the panelists later, and he's the one that coordinates that business side of things. And we also train communities, so getting ready for statewide exercise, there'll be partners from all across the state playing this big major game that is hopefully we won't have a hurricane, but you never know. And make sure that we test everything, that we're ready in case our state is pushed to maximum capacity. But the main thing is we want to train communities to be self-sufficient. And I know that in your world, you want that as well. So that's a little bit about who we are. Right. So, as you know, with all the changes that are going on in our country with FEMA and emergency management, the desire really is for self-sustaining communities because we don't know how long it'll be before FEMA gets to our rescue. We want to train communities to be able to survive for several days without intervention from anyone. And I think that, they call it a cavalry that's coming to help us. And unfortunately, in America, we've always thought they're going to come to our rescue. And over the last several years, we've seen changes with that, budget cuts and different departments of FEMA closing down. So, for example, I was in Dallas over the last winter storm that just happened a few weeks ago, and I got stuck there a couple of extra days. Well, up here, it was debilitating. On I-20, there was no way to get down the roads. The trucks were jackknifed, the trucks were stuck. Once the road was open, they couldn't move the trucks because they didn't know where the drivers were. So we had an after-action report here just a few weeks ago talking about systems we can put in place to help prevent that as a state for the next time that something like that happens. Because it's not if, it's when. We saw winter weather last year down in South Louisiana and covered 20 parishes, I believe. We got snow like 10 inches in New Orleans. Who gets that? So anyway, I think that that's where, as a state, we are really trying to direct people. And I know that in other states they're doing the same. I am on a conference call every couple of weeks with emergency managers from all over the state that work in planning. Not just the state, I'm sorry, all over the country. There's only 3 of us in the state. But and the main thing is that they're trying to help their counties prepare in case FEMA can't come. So I think that's what we're moving towards, to be self-sustaining. So, why it matters to have higher education. It took me a long time to get out of college. A long time until I figured out what I wanted to do. But I graduated, so I guess that's what matters. But, you look at what is going on around the world and what we went through in 2020 with a pandemic. I remember I was teaching school that Friday, and we got the orders handed down that we would be gone for 2 weeks. 2 weeks turned into the rest of the school year. Rest of the school year turned in, we go back to school, and we are taking temperatures, we are doing germ masks, and children are wearing masks. Our world totally was rocked that day. But unfortunately, those things are becoming more and more
the older I get. I mean, we see campus violence. We see, situations where there's gunmen on campus. There could be, anything can happen here. And I tell people that all the time. My kids live in this bubble. They think, oh, it's not going to happen. I'm like, be aware of your surroundings. Be prepared. What are you going to do if you get in a situation like winter weather a couple of weeks ago and you're stuck on the highway for 36 hours? Do you have anything in your car that can sustain you? So I think as emergency managers, that's what that is my goal for the state of Louisiana, that we are preparing people for those situations. I got to do a wonderful outreach back in the fall at another campus here in Louisiana, and it was Emergency Preparedness Day, and there were different departments from all over the state. Louisiana Department of Health was there, campus police was there, Army National Guard, GOSEP was there. It went down a whole alley of all these different booths. And we are a big draw in the South for students from the North. And our weather's a little different than theirs, our circumstances are a little different than theirs. And so one of my questions for these students, are you prepared if you got stuck in your dorm room for 2 or 3 days? And I talked to over 500 students that day, and out of 500 students, there were only about 10 that had a plan. And so I think that it is our job as emergency managers, as educators and administrators, to prepare these students for what can come. Also, students and educators are critical response partners during times of an event, just like what happened in winter weather. It's a collaboration. It's not I'm telling you to do this. I'm telling you, because students have great information. They're so tech savvy. They're not scared of things like I was, or I am still pressing the wrong key on the computer. But it's not preparedness for me. It's a whole culture. It's getting to know people. It's not just it's not just something that we do that's on paper. It's just not just a plan, but it's truly a culture. And I've learned that just in the short time I've been here, getting to go to different conferences, that there is a different mindset when you get into emergency management. And I guess that's what drives me, because I love it. So then right now we have kind of a roadshow going on in our state where we are reworking plans for all 64 parishes for the next 4 years. We're doing 16 a year. So we've partnered with SDMI, which is down in Baton Rouge, and GOSEP, and we have told them these are what we want to see in emergency operations plans. Because unfortunately, there are plans that I read in New Orleans that are in copy we have to address that as we're writing plans and preparing the community. Training and capacity building, I'm a big proponent of training. If we don't exercise it, we don't know if it's going to work. That is where, especially in our younger, I have a 26-year-old, a 23-year-old, and 21. To a student population, and they are saying we have an emergency lockdown, and there's not any education behind that for them to understand the seriousness of this. This message isn't just coming because we're just trying to send something out. They're not going to trust you the next time. So we'll go into a little bit of that in a few minutes. And then again, just like I was talking about earlier, we're planning for, not with. We serve as guides, as emergency managers. No matter what role you play, if you're in here today or you're online, and if you're not a student, well, even a student, you function to help as a guide. So this was kind of interesting. I did some research into administrators because those are going to be your higher level people, your office, and those that are around you. You know, administrators are highly. I worked at Southeastern down in Canton. I worked on campus for 4 years, and I worked in the controller's office. Financial. The controller to me was like an elevated person, and then you had the provost, and then you had the president. These are high-level people, and that's how I look at administrators across our country with education. Whether it's a principal of a school, whether it is a after-school daycare leader, they are the administrators, they are the leadership, and they are the ones that everyone is to look to for how we respond. So we can, in an environment where we're trying to do preparedness education, you have to create that inclusive planning space. There has to be room, whether it, and you may have 3 people show up, but you have to offer it. You know, you have to offer it. We invest in training, just like I said earlier. If you're not training, if you're not exercising it, it's going to fail. It's going to fail. We are seeing that more and more, and it's so cool because we have a statewide just an exercise planner now, and she is being bombarded with, especially after this winter weather, but how are we going to do this next time? It communicates consistently. Communication is consistently. So with the training, if we're sending out messages, if we're preparing and we're training them, and then we conduct drills, and we keep those messaging platforms updated, we are going to have much better preparedness in our students. But as administrators, you will be looked at in a different way. And that trust gap, there again, is going to be broken down. And it will be healed. All right, so educators, this is important to me because I remember the day that we got a message that we were going home for COVID. I had a 4th grade class in my classroom, and I remember this young man looking at me, and he looked at me and he said, "Miss Nancy, are we going to die?" And I said, "Fred, I don't know. But all I can tell you is you need to listen to your mom, you need to listen to your grandmother, and you need to listen to what is being told of you to stay safe." In the fall, he came back with a mask on and hugged my neck, and he said, "I didn't die." And I said, "Fred, what did you do?" He goes, "I listened to my mom, I listened to my grandmother, and I listened to what I was told to do." And I said, "Well, what did that involve?" 9 years old, being able to give me a whole plan of preparedness. So it does start early. And I love going to outreach in schools. And some people would say, "Man, when you can get up early to plan and prepare, hopefully when they get to be my age at 53, they'll be like the rock stars of planning." Katrina changed my life. Katrina changed my life in planning. I'd always kind of been a planner, but then that changed my life for my home, for my classroom, for everyone around me. They all joke with me. They're like, "Jancy, you always look prepared for something. You've got your doctor kit, you've got your food." And I'm like, you never know. You never know. So anyway, an educator, you're that trusted voice for the visible leadership that builds that confidence, and that was just that example I gave of Fred. You encourage critical thinking about risk. So in a classroom setting, this is something that you can do even as an exercise with students. If you're online and you're an educator, think about that, of ways to incorporate different critical thinking skills in preparedness with your students. You identify and empower the natural leaders among you. You see them. We all know who they are in a classroom setting. You can see those students that are going to step up, that are going to be the leaders, that if you give them a duty, that they're going to be able to fulfill that. And create those learning assignments that can fill those holes, such as service learning integrations. You know, I was talking about the preparedness outreach I did down at another school in South Louisiana, and they were getting service hours. Different sororities and fraternities, and even faith-based organizations that were there were doing outreach. They were getting service hours for working in these with doing outreach. One of the things that could be an idea is doing some sort of hazard mitigation for a small under-sourced town. There's a lot of areas around our country that are under-sourced, they're underfunded, they don't have enough manpower. If you have an emergency operator, emergency management operator in the parish, for example, there's one down in South Louisiana, and he wears the role of sheriff. He wears the role of the director of emergency preparedness, and he's also in the police jury. Well, my goodness, when does he have time to write plans? So he's got to have good people around him. That can even start with students, helping him work with some of these under-sourced areas. And then you model preparedness, you don't just mandate it. So in my classroom, I remember this, I had a first aid kit, I had an emergency evacuation plan, just like we talked about earlier, how we get out of here if there's an emergency, if there's a shutdown, if we need to get out, where the restrooms are. That was important to me, and that should be important to us in the world of emergency management. So students, you're important. Whether you feel it or not, you are important. You're important in the future of emergency management for your states and your communities and in your home even. Because people are going to look to you when disaster strikes. If you have that leadership mentality, they're going to follow you. So one of the things that you can do is start a student-led preparedness group. If you don't have one on your campus or in your high school or in your community, think about that. You do it all hazard or student-led preparedness campaigns. You can make campaigns for this campus, campuses across the country, wherever you're in school, you can make preparedness campaigns. You can intern as an emergency manager. There was a young lady who lives in middle Louisiana, in Alexandria, and she was part of the disaster that happened in Texas last summer. Her name is Emma Bolts, and she came and when she was honored at the governor's office of Homeland Security when she got a badge from the governor and everything. So after we did all the pretty stuff, she came and toured with me in our agency, and she goes, "Tell me what you do. Tell me how I can do this." She's a speech pathology major, but she wants to intern in emergency management, so we're looking at that with her. Because that one event where she saved a bunch of little girls' lives has changed her trajectory in life. And that's how things happen. I never would have thought I would be standing here 3 years ago. But things draw us in, and if it's something you love. Campus CERT, I know that we're going to talk probably a little bit about that later, but community emergency response teams, having community-led response teams on the campus. Cross-campus collaboration. Whether you go to school at Grambling, whether you go to school at LSU, whether you go to school at Central Arkansas University, you're still students. And you can collaborate. I'll collaborate with anybody in any agency because those connections are so important. And it's what will make a great community if we have that. And have a personal preparedness plan and share it with others. Just like I was saying, disaster happens. People are going to be looking to you. How are you responding? Are you panicked and crazy? Or do you have a plan? No, this is what we're going to do. And I think that bleeds over, and this is totally personal, it bleeds over into our personal lives too, and how your family will respond to things. And then ultimately how they believe emergency management looks and preparedness looks. The way I act, as a side note, and being able to be prepared, my kids now all live on their own. They have plans. They have water for a few days. They have some canned goods built up. You know, these things I hope that I can pass on to them. So boots on the ground, this is so important. And when I came to GoSep, this was one thing I asked them, can I go out and meet people? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. You have to read plans now too. And I'm like, I'll read the plans. I can read the plans, but I want to be able to go out. So these are boots on the ground things that we can do with students. Train student volunteers, CPR and AED. You never know when you're going to have a student that collapse. You never know whenever you're going to have someone in front of you collapse. Are you prepared for that? I am. Faculty first responders. How many faculty on this campus are CPR certified? My husband collapsed in May of 2025 while he was handing squash to our next door neighbor. My next door neighbor never thought I would have to do CPR on a Saturday morning on a beautiful summer day. He was ready though. He did it. Did it save Aaron's life? No, but he tried. So I encourage all of y'all to get CPR certified. It is so important. That is one thing as an emergency preparedness responder you can do. So important. Faculty first responders, the resident advisors, the safety ambassadors, I know that I live in student housing. That was just, my parents were paying for an apartment back in the day. So I lived on campus. Ate on campus. Didn't have a car. And my RA was one of my best friends. She was my wedding. Those resident advisors, they have more impact than you think. In GoSep, we have all kinds of outreach materials. We have worked with a couple of resident assistants at LSU that wanted to set up safety halls. At the end of their hallway, they have a whole panel of handouts and things like that to teach on preparedness. We're willing to do that with anybody. That is so important. Peer-to-peer communication networks, like I said, students, they have more access to anything than I've just learned how to use TikTok. And you got to know how to do it to survive nowadays, but these students, their peer-to-peer, it's so important because they're going to trust their peer more than they trust what I say. Blue Sky Bay relationships, I love this. Going out and meet people when it's no disaster, much like today. This is so important in emergency management, preparedness, and plans, because if you don't have those blue sky relationships, man, it's going to struggle later on. It also helps those students trust you. It also helps your other educators trust you and your administrators trust you if you have those blue sky relationships. Listen to the needs of the community in your school as you plan. Definitely listen to students as educators, administrators, listen to what their concerns are. If they come to an educator and they tell them, I have a concern for this, I feel unsafe here, it's important to listen to them because sometimes they see things that we don't see. We get caught up in our day-to-day and our roles, and we forget about the pressures that they have on them. Know the culture of the people you're working with. When I first started working with the tribes for the state of Louisiana, I had to do all kinds of digging into how to talk with them, how to treat them. What do I say? Do they want to be called an Indian or a Native American? How do I refer to the chief? Do I bow down and kiss his feet? That's really kind of extreme, but their chief is like their president. So there's a lot of respect that goes there. So I was able to go do a powwow a year ago. They asked me to come speak. The powwow was on Saturday. I stayed and spoke on Sunday. And I'm going to that tribe this Saturday. They've asked me to come back. And it's nothing that I can deliver I don't have any money to give them, but I can direct them on how they can write some grants and get some money. I also can direct them on, hey, we have some radios that we need to surplus in our agency. Is that something your tribe would be interested in? And I can put them in touch with the people that they need to talk to. So they're planning for that disaster that could come. When leadership's present, there's an increased confidence. And you all know that. Whenever you have leadership from an organization there, it increases your confidence in how that organization is going to work and roll. I know whenever our brigadier general walks in, his office is not far from mine. I set up it a different way. I maybe sit there reading the plan and just kind of hunched over, but when he comes to my door, so that leadership presence, it makes a difference. I'm not scared of him, I love him to death, but I'm just saying, I'm not a green suit. All right. So from reaction to resilience, we do not want a reactive culture. We don't want to have somebody waiting on instructions. We don't want to say, I hope it doesn't happen. Because the reality is it could. We want to train students, we want educators and administrators to know, I know my role, I know what I'm going to do if something happens. We look out for each other, you have a plan, this could, oh, okay, what's wrong? And we prepare together. Awesome. Thank you. I love this all. So these are just some tools. This is kind of a wrap up. What are just some tools that we use to educate the community? The first one is the Get a Game Plan campaign. We have an app for that. I brought all of you a magnet to get a game plan. If you don't have that, it's phenomenal. You can get everything you can imagine on that Get a Game Plan app. The governor has worked really hard with our agency to keep that thing updated. It is constant. He is always checking it. He is making sure things are updated on there. We also have a preparedness guide, and I brought a few of those. Me and one of my co-workers, this was our first project with GoSet, and so this is a preparedness guide, but we have a digital version of this, but there are people who don't do digital, and there again, you kind of know your community. We have a public information officer who updates this all the time. So preparedness guides, the emergency alert system, and then iPause, which is the integrated public alert warning system. These are all ways we educate. This is 511. This is going to show you anything in the state that could be going on. Also tell you about your road closures. So key takeaways. I'm not going to really go into questions because I thought there would be more students here, but preparedness is relational. Trust is infrastructure. It's what we have to build things on. Students are not liabilities, they're assets. Educators shape that campus resilience culture, and boots on the ground builds the credibility. Thank y'all for letting me come and speak today. I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing from all of y'all. Y'all have a great day, and happy spring.
Thank you, Nancy. We're going to change the PowerPoint around and bring our panel up on the stage, and we'll get started in just a minute.
are going to start our next session, which is higher education as a catalyst for resilient communities. It is definitely an honor for me. My name is David Spano. I'm a disaster services specialist for Volunteers in Louisiana, which is the office of the Lieutenant Governor in the state of Louisiana. One of the things about this family, we have four panelists, and they are all members of universities here in the state, and universities are research engines. They have data analysts, we've got workforce developers, and so we understand that higher education and is at the forefront of a lot of what make communities more resilient. So with that, I'm going to let our panelists all introduce themselves. I know that we've got two in person, and then we do have two online. So I'm going to go ahead and let people hear in person introduce themselves first.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Seth William. I am representing the state of Texas here today at Texas A&M University with the Hazard Reduction and Recovery Center. I'll talk more about our center, but my focus as a center is largely involved in educational and research and workforce development research, and then also science communication and research translation. So really at the intersection of how we get research to these communities in an effective and an impactful way, and really excited to talk about it.
Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Crystal Allen from Southern University Ag Center. And I'm just going to do a really brief introduction because, of course, I did the most and created a presentation. Actually, but I worked so hard, and I was like, I'll do it in 2 minutes, guys. I'll do it in 2 minutes. So I work with the cooperative extension. We are a Grambling University, Southern University. And cooperative extension, we're going, I told my mom to keep it 3 minutes, so let's go. Oh, okay. See, I have some.
I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
My name is Bonnie Now, and I am the manager for business continuity for Tulane University. I am excited to be here, and sorry that I didn't be in Grambling this morning. I'm looking forward to being a part of our family, and my discussion today we're going to talk about risk versus resilience in higher ed.
Jim? Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Jim Williams. Welcome from University of Louisiana Lafayette, where I am the operations officer for the Louisiana Business Diversity Operations Center. And in that capacity, I work with the private sector to help them get prepared for and recover from any types of man-made or natural disasters. I've been in this position for about 5 years, and before that, I spent 27 years as a member of the United States Army in Louisiana Army National Guard. So I've been working in the emergency management space at some shape, form, or fashion for the last 30 plus years. So glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, so moving forward, Mrs. Bonnie, I believe that you are going to be up first to be able to speak about what you are working on currently. We've had to shift a little bit here, so I would ask you questions, but I think you prepared your presentation, is that correct?
I did give me for my presentation. So I don't know if that's good enough, but give me my talk about it.
Great, I love that. That's perfect.
I don't know. I could put on a jacket like Tim, right? And so I trust that. So the kind of our two campus over there. Good to see you guys, and please be part of our panel. Just as everybody knows, I am a member of the state BEOC, worked at BEOC for a very long time, and really enjoy working here. The work that I do with Tulane is a little bit different. So I come from what I call the real world. So I do academia, and Tulane is definitely not real in every which way. One of the things that I like to talk about, what I've really been focusing on here at Tulane, is this concept of risk versus resilience. And for me, we really talk about it frequently in words. And I am a stickler for words and what they mean. So I love the emergency management side. I play one on TV, but I'm not an emergency manager. But what is, how do we grow our diversity? Understanding the risks and opportunities for improvement and failure. So however we see natural disaster, man-made disasters, how do we really frame this and look forward? You know, we at all universities, higher ed, have a very unique challenge and a very unique opportunity. I can say a lot of with our freshmen moving in, and they come to us as 18-year-olds, and they place their hope and their future in our community, right? And we have to prepare them for tomorrow. And the thing that I don't think about that, how are we moving them tomorrow? How are they coming to us? And what are the risks that we face? One of the big challenges is, are they going to come to universities at all? Is this really where they're going to be? Are we giving them what they need to be successful adults as they fall? So part of my job is understanding the risks of universities, not only here in Louisiana and internationally across the United States. And my partner, very specifically, Louisiana Risk partner, we actually have that which a lot of universities have, but they don't have operations resilience or business continuity or operational risk. So the way I define is what we do and how we do it. Right? And so what I do is how we do it. So in looking forward, we're trying to understand how we do it. The real question is, what is risk? Right? And how do we mitigate it? So you can't eliminate it, but how do you mitigate it? And trying to mitigate risk, I put this as saying that is hard no. Right? So we're looking at the risk and say, no, I don't want this. No, I don't want to make it. No, I don't want to do that. No. And while that's successful, right, is that really where we need to be for tomorrow? Is that really how we frame our program for If we're teaching our students yes, how do we turn what we do into yes? Right? And that's where resilience comes in. So, FEMA has some great definitions, and the one that I'll keep very, very on is the ability to respond to or bounce back in any situation. And that doesn't necessarily be man-made disaster or natural disaster. It could be economic downturn. It could be political unrest. It could be economic upturn. You have most businesses fail for having too much or too many customers, right? So this idea is how do we frame our universities to look forward, not in the rear mirror? And I talk a lot about there's nothing wrong with the rear mirror. If you drive to Louisiana, I'm sure most of you have, looking forward, it's not something right sometimes, but we definitely need to know what's going on behind us. Right? But this is what's behind us. It's already happening. That's how we get our and understanding. We're not going to mitigate things we don't know about. Right? We're going to mitigate things we know, which is behind us. And that's important. But resilience is the ability to see what's behind us, to predict what we need to know, to really look ahead of us. How do we get from here? What do we not ask? What do we need to ask? Right? I think sometimes often talk about who's at that table, who's not at that table, and who needs to be at that table. These are the dialogues that really help us understand where our university is going. These are the dialogues everyone in the university needs to see their role and responsibility in framing the future. Not only for the university sake, for our customers, like Sarah Ryan, our students. Those are the ones that we have a debt that we have to pay, right? Those are the ones we serve. Those are the ones that they hope and trust in us as they go to lead them tomorrow, right? And we have to offer them these opportunities. We have to be creative to break systems that bind us within our higher universities and the way we look at risk and understand resilience. So to me, what I like the one thought is what can we do better? What can we do different? What questions are we not asked? What do we need to ask? How do we serve the next generation in a way that far exceeds they hope and expect? Right? How do we build that tomorrow for them that they can walk into it and really drive us to a great state out of Louisiana and of course Arkansas as well. We want to really make sure that our students, our young people are prepared for tomorrow. And that is our responsibility as all That's all I have to say. Again, I thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to be here. I always am willing to answer questions that anybody has and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Ronnie, for your input, and we will be asking you questions later, so keep thinking. Okay, Shannon, you can just give us an overview of your work and what you guys are doing over there in Lafayette, Louisiana.
Again, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak here. No, Ronnie, probably 3+ years now, working in this environment. It's always a pleasure to work with her. Ms. Heather, it's good to see you again. And to my other colleagues here that I physically see, I apologize for not being in person. But what we're doing here at the University of Louisiana Lafayette is the BBC serves two roles here. One, during operations, should there be an emergency, GOSOP does a phenomenal job of taking care of citizens and municipalities. What I do is work with GOSOP to make sure that the private sector has the information that they need to make real-time decisions on how to prepare for and recover from any kind of emergency that may be out there. And then in the response, when there are some unique challenges that cannot be fulfilled, maybe through normal acquisition processes, I try to connect dots. I don't do acquisitions. There are people smarter than me who have lots of legal backgrounds to do those kinds of things. I don't know good and orange, so I try to stay out of that arena. I make sure that connect the dot here, connect the dot there, and let those folks do those acquisitions and things. Most recently, in January, the ice storm hit our neighbors in the north. There were a couple of municipalities that have had problems gathering rock salt for the treat their municipal locations, and they were having trouble finding normal channels. I was able to reach out to a national network of suppliers and said, this is the folks that are looking for something, can you help them fill this need? And within a few hours, they were able to make that happen. During blue sky days, when there's no emergency that they're responding to or something they're responding to, we do training here at the university regarding emergency management. And that's one of the reasons why I need their visit today is this afternoon we're starting another session for what we call the GoSep Academy, and it's a partnership between us, GoSep, and Louisiana University Preparedness Association, LEPA, where we're bringing great information practitioners into the field. And so over 2 days, 8 hours of training, today they're doing a purchasing, believe it or not, purchasing and acquisition class. So they'll have some folks from GoSep that are coming down that are being able to tell parishes and municipalities some of the latest changes in their community in an academic environment and exchange information and make sure that the practitioners have exactly what they need. And so that's our two mission that we have here at this CCC. And we're a partner because, again, the great thing about having this CCC in an academic environment is I don't have to be an expert in all different businesses. If I need to talk to somebody about maybe something that's in agriculture, then I may reach out to our databasers at LSU and grab somebody from the cooperative extension office or something like that. If it's energy or engineering or any of the other fields or disciplines, I can turn to our neighbors and other institutions and somebody who's an expert in that industry help us answer questions. For the private sector. So that's what we're doing here, and you need to where the business is lies. Thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate your input, and yes, there will be questions from you later as well. All right, I would also like to now, Dr. Allen, this is your presentation that we will put up on the screen, and Dr. Allen is from Southern University. And she's going to go through there and there.
Thank you so much. So again, I am Mr. Allen, Southern University. Unless you grew up in a rural community or you work at a family institution, a lot of people have no idea what cooperative extension is, and when they see agriculture, they think of farming, they think crops, they think about so many different things. But we actually have a tripartite mission. Go ahead and we have a tripartite mission in the Ag Center, which is research, teaching, and extension. I work with cooperative extension. We serve or reach each parish throughout the state. When you think of cooperative extension, just think extension outreach. Extension is bridging that gap between research, teaching, and the community. And that is what we really rest our hope on in regards to reaching individuals. Another thing to know is extension agents are housed within the parishes they work. So, for example, I have a statewide appointment because I'm a specialist, but our agents are really boots on the ground where they are. We can switch it. That was just a really nice slide, guys. So when we think about disasters, resilience and sustainability are developed long before the disaster occurs. It occurs on those blue sky days. It occurs through the trust that we build and the relationships. Like I said, with our agents being housed where they are working, they are embedded with the community. They know the needs of the community and they know how they can really help communities become more sustainable. So we know if a disaster occurs, we live in Louisiana, so we know disasters are coming. We've had really good years. The last couple of years in regards to hurricanes, although the freeze and the ice storm wasn't what we wanted. But we know disasters disrupt livelihoods, and it impacts more than just infrastructure. That's where extension comes in, because when we think about recovery, it is uneven across populations, especially rural communities. Resilience and recovery looks a lot different, and especially in the services that are offered. Next, please. So extension role within this process or the disaster cycle is to provide evidence-based emergency preparedness and education. We feel like education is one of our biggest tools to help communities. However, we know that it's difficult because we live in Louisiana. So can you imagine me going into the community of Louisiana and telling them how to prepare when we throw hurricane parties and they're like, ma'am, I've been living here for 60 years, I know how to prepare. However, we know that it is a cycle. So when we do not give them the information, they're going to prepare. When they respond and recover from disasters, they're going to go back to their baseline of their status quo, and then another disaster occurs, and they're back within a cycle. We also look at disaster nutrition and food security planning and cooperative extension because we know food security and food access is already an issue in many communities throughout the state, and disasters tend to amplify that. And lastly, we look at youth and household readiness. I can tell you, talking to a group of children is much more impactful than talking to a room full of adults on disasters. Because I stand here and I say, hey, do you guys have a disaster plan? If your house catches on fire, your kids know where to meet you at. Because everybody's going to run. Everybody's going to run out of the house. And once you are in the middle of a disaster or an emergency, you may not be thinking the absolute best, or you may not be clear about it, and this child's going to run to their friend's house, and this child's going to run here, and as a parent, you're going to be, oh my goodness, is the child still in the house? Where did they go? It just creates a disruption. And then you're going to look at me as an adult and say, yeah, my kids know where to go. But do they really? Did you tell them, or did you practice that with them? Did you reinforce those exercises? However, if I stand in front of a room full of children and I ask this question, they're going to be engaged, they're going to be excited, and I give them an action. And I'm like, when you go home, ask your adult to tell you where is your meetup spot. And they're like, yes, Dr. Allen, I'm going to do it. Love you preparedness, love you readiness, and they are our secret to really pushing family preparedness further than all. Next, please. So, extension, of course, fills that gap between response and recovery. We are not first responders. We're not second responders. We are not on the front line. No one's calling my phone when a disaster occurs. However, we translate the information that is being communicated from emergency responders and from agencies, and we really translate that information and get it out to our communities. That's our role within response and recovery. Of course, a lot of our work is done more so on preparedness through education, but education is also used as a form of mitigation within communities. Agriculture, that is the name of our emergency preparedness program, and the Ag Center, everybody sees it, and I think they think it's something to eat. But if they don't know, they're like, okay, I see what you did there. It's our mascot. Our mascot is the Southern University Jaguars, and I work in agriculture. I just put it together. I was like, what can I name this program? Agriculture. I love it. I really need to come up with something to eat for it, because everybody's like, what is it? It's not an acronym, it's just a play on words. So just a really brief snapshot of the initiative that we have or we completed, and this is going to go really fast. Next one, please. I actually did this in partnership with Gold Step and Ruby, and we went throughout the state. We did real preparedness for real people throughout the different regions of the state, coming in, bringing in individuals to talk about food safety, fortification, and different things. I am really big on establishing partnerships and not duplicating efforts. I feel like everybody has something to bring to the table. And once I identify you, I'm going to call you, and you can call me, and we'll keep going. Next, please. We started a podcast. Why? Because I felt too tall. And I was like, hey, you have a podcast, equipment, let's do this. So I was like, hey, let's do a podcast. So the gentleman I'm talking to, he is a detective at Southern University. We brought in community leaders. Because we know in the work that we do, especially in rural communities, we want to have this thing in our mind that the elected officials are the most powerful or the most impactful people in their communities. They're not all the time. Sometimes it's a little meatball that makes a really good red beans out of church, and everybody wants to utilize social media as a platform to get little messages out, to get those tips out, to get those things out, those graphics. This is just one example of a social media graphic. We come up with these really catchy captions. Now, with my friend ChatGPT, it helps so much with my captions. So we just utilize those resources because I'm always like, hey, make sure you follow our social media page. Guess what? Now, on a random Tuesday, you're scrolling, I'm telling you, hey, we know that a storm is coming, do not run your generator in the house. Just something really quick. Webinars, do those as well. I identify individuals who are working in the area because ultimately I do not aspire to know everything, but if I can find the people who do, I like to connect them. Next, please. So our student work, and this is, I want to stay here for 1 minute, since this is the Higher Education Collaborative. We are always working to build resilience within our institutions and our community, and much like Nancy mentioned, we realize that a lot of our students, this is their first time away from home. We have some students who are from out of state who's never experienced a hurricane. And while our university does have a fantastic emergency plan and they're going to work it and things, we felt like our students need to be just a little bit more educated on different issues and disasters or emergencies that could impact them. So we began an initiative in collaboration with our police department on campus, so Southern University Police Department, intramural sports, and our Student Government Association to really engage with our students on different things. On this one, we had the FBI come in and do an active shooter scenario and presentation. I will tell you, getting students to come was not the easiest thing. It has to be incentivized, unfortunately. And so that's when we reach out to teachers and we're like, hey, this is the work we're doing. It's very necessary. You think you can offer maybe some extra credit or something just to encourage them because just students seeing flyers around, I guess it's not like, oh my goodness, I need to know. But you come in there like, I'm so happy I came, I learned, run, high five. Okay, next please. Another thing we have with the students like to call Pretty Wednesday and Sunday, you guys. They dress up, they go to the student union, and they hang around and they eat lunch and they have a great time. So we said we're going to do a reverse Pretty Wednesday. We're going to bring a DJ out, and that's how we're going to get them. You have to be really innovative in your approach with engaging collegiate students because they most need information, and we were pretty successful. And I want to say how happy. That's okay. This was not a student-led initiative. This was a webinar on the Louisiana Fortified Homes grant that we hosted just in former communities about the grant that was available, the $10,000 worth of. I don't know what I put up there last. It's a surprise for me too. Let's go. We're all surprised. Oh, so in 2021, when COVID, we were in our COVID year, we were wondering how can we best expand our capacity and expand our reach. So we did our inaugural virtual conference on preparedness, response, and recovery. It was a 3-day conference, but each day was geared towards a different audience. We actually did it in partnership with them. And that first day was for community leaders, community members, and of course extension professionals. The second day was on response for community responders. And our third day was for farmers. And you say, how do you know the difference? Our third day was more a lot of tech. So we told our presenters do not have PowerPoint. A lot of people will call in because we know that farmers in our urban communities, they're not going to join us all day. We're going to catch them. We're going to send the agenda out. We may get somebody to dial into the Zoom for an hour or two, but we're going to keep it low tech and just really getting that information out to them. It was really successful. That was supported through a grant from Extension Foundation. I want to say that's my last one. It was. So really, really quick snapshot. I don't know how quick it was, but that's me and that's the work that I'm doing Sunday.
Thank you so much, Dr. Allen. That's a tough act to follow. A lot of really great information, but I will offer up now Seth Jordan from Texas A&M.
I realized before I didn't give everyone a Texas A&M howdy, so howdy, and I'm really excited to be here. I'll give a quick overview of our center. We're actually housed under the College of Architecture and Department of Landscape Architecture and Urban Planning. So our center was founded to really study the relationship between society and the built environment, and through research, but also outreach and education. One of my messages on this panel I wanted to convey is we often think about those things as separate. We have to do our research, and we have to educate students, and we have to do outreach with communities. I've witnessed really successful projects that have combined those three together, looked at research as a way to educate. I'm actually tangentially in the education psychology field, so how do we train emergency managers better, and how do we train society and educate society better? Those are research questions, but also have educational impacts and have outreach to communities. Some other projects our center is well known for is we do the evacuation planning study for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for the Texas coast. So those are often very technical transportation planning studies that Jancy mentioned, transportation challenges, so looking at those and evacuation due to hurricane impacts. Our director is also well known in the volunteer space in terms of mapping long-term recovery groups and working with those groups to formalize and be more effective in disaster recovery. So I'll keep it simple today. We do a lot more great work at our center, but those are kind of some of our high-impact activities that have research, education, and outreach all intertwined so that the faculties get that grant submission, get that journal publication, but we're also thinking about it through a community lens and involving students on those projects.
Thank you, Seth. And it sounds like all of you are doing just wonderful work at your universities. And I'm going to ask some open questions to anyone that wants to answer first. Don't make me call on you. What are the most common vulnerabilities that you see that institutions underestimate?
Panasonic 4K.
Yes. Working with the rural communities, I think one of the biggest, I would say, is the digital divide. As we move forward with technology, a lot of emergency alerts, a lot of information is conveyed online, but we still have a lot of communities throughout Louisiana who has limited broadband access. And then when we think about digital literacy, a lot of individuals, especially our aging populations, don't have the skills to access that information, and they still depend on word of mouth. So that critical information that is distributed through online platforms, they don't receive it in a timely manner.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
Yes, I'd like to add to that. Tailing off of that, one of the largest risks that I see is the expanding cyber threat that's out there. With different versions of these new artificial intelligence tools that can imitate more realistic scenarios and imitating people and making communication sound realistic, it's going to become more and more difficult for both practitioners and institutions to make sure that they're getting out the word and preventing disinformation that's out there, one, and two, protecting their students, their faculty, staff, and their protected information as well. We've all been seen or heard, or maybe been experienced identity theft and any of those different things that are out there. But I think that's, when I talk to the private sector, we always talk about hurricane season from June 1st to November 30th. But I tell them it's always cyber season. You have to be prepared and you have to take steps appropriately.
Thank you, Jim.
Jim, I agree with you on that, and the thing that I would like to kind of, as our one institute, I walk around too, like, looking at data compliance, data security, and think that's in the city, right? and that jump drive in the States, right? So I agree with you that the understanding from a technology perspective is always going to be the biggest challenge. So as someone who spent 35 years in the technology industry before I came into this particular industry, the thing that concerns me most was twofold. Number one is understanding the future for universities and the role they play, not only to their students, but to their community in which they live. But this idea of changing technology through artificial intelligence, large language models, understanding how these work and what do they really mean. Our students are using them. Our students use them every day. They use them for different things. They may be a therapist, they may be all kinds of things out there. But we don't really have a policy from an AI perspective on how we can use AI within our organization. I actually wrote I had to do a report to my boss on how I utilize AI for my own organization. And over the last 6 months, I've saved cooling between $67,000 and $71,000 by the use of AI, and that's based on time, my own time, and if I would have to an end, what that would look like. So AI is a help, right? But if we don't understand how it's going to move forward in 5 years, and we're going to be using it as a weapon or plunging against our students. The other thing is that my biggest fear is, are we graduating students that have a degree, have the opportunity to get a job after they graduate? They've invested a lot of money and time into our educational programs, and what I am seeing across the board, and so I do a lot of work with Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies in an association that I belong to, and I'm on an international board and that's the conversation that they have, is they have a challenge to try to hire younger people, because those entry-level jobs because of AI are going away, and they're going away exponentially quickly, and these students are not equipped to do those entry-level jobs because they don't exist anymore. And in 3 to 4 to 5 years, they definitely won't exist. So we have to move forward as a university and be predictive of what's going to happen, as opposed to thinking that it's going to be the same old that we've had to look backwards in our universities to say this is how we've done it for years, where you have the lecturer giving us lectures on whatever you're lecturing on. No one's augmented that. I mean, that is very important, and that really is extremely important. But as we look forward, I have the whole world at my fingertips. I can know everything that was ever out there. I don't need an encyclopedia to do that. I can go to Dr. Google, I can go to ChatGPT, I can go wherever you want, and I can pull up research papers from whatever you need today. And I don't need, so part of that is how do we look at this forward, and how do we adapt our universities as we look forward over the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years, and God forbid 20 years from now.
Well, all very good points. One of the things that we're talking about is higher education obviously is a catalyst for resilient communities, and one of the things that the organization I work for, Volunteer Louisiana, does is we train CERT programs. Shanti talked about Campus CERT. The campus that we're on right now, Grambling State University, is the first HBCU in the state of Louisiana that has a robust CERT program. Started 2 years ago with Dr. Quentin Holmes, who has since retired, but we trained over 80 individuals here, both students and staff, and then also University of Louisiana at Monroe. However, and this is a question to all of you, how do you get that buy-in for resiliency on your campus? Because I spent 30 years in higher education, and when I came to this position, went to a lot of different universities here in the state saying, hey, we need to prepare. We are in Louisiana, Texas as well. How do we get the buy-in from executive leadership to build resiliency on campus? Sorry, that was a long question.
So my problem is my personality is so big, I have to be mindful to not overtake a room. So that's why I was being quiet to give everybody else. It was intentional, but then you kept looking at me and I'm like, I gotta talk. It is really so. So in regards to leadership, it's really just expressing and really being able to show that need. In regards to student participation, I am not above not compromising, what am I trying to say?
You did say incentivize.
Yeah, I'm not about incentivizing participation. Like, we know, and it's just like with our children, if you have children, we know what's best for them, we tell them, but for some reason, sometimes you just have to kind of coerce them a little bit. So with incentivizing it for students, and I know a thing that works for us, Greek life on so many campuses is so big to the students, right? If you can attach an organization or you can partner with an organization, you will increase the participation in the room tenfold, just because that organization is going to be here. So I'm not above making those partnerships with different organizations and student-led organizations on campus to really entice those students to come. I know the material. So once you get here, I'm going to engage you. I'm going to really teach you something, and then you're going to walk out the door and say, man, I'm so happy I came. I really learned something. Or you're going to say, hey, I came because such and such was here. But once you get them in the room, that's the key.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. Sometimes you just have to be the person to start it. You have to be the person that, for example, we have been talking about at our college and center about undergraduate research experiences for a long time. I started a group, we got 50 students, and it was a niche topic. It was wildfire and amenity migrants in the state of Texas, looking at that issue. And we had 50 students reach out to volunteer to do impactful research and impactful work. And then I was able to communicate that to people at higher up, saying the demand is there. We just need to get more programs off the ground. So I think being the person to start it and communicating interest, communicating impact is really a good way to reach the higher ups.
I'd like to comment, if I may, and I appreciate, the willingness to bribe or incentivize students, because I'm all for that. But the one thing that I've done is try to be creative and solve problems. So I need our emergency action plans rewritten for us. We have a policy document, not an actual plan that we can read. So what I did is I actually reached out to our information technology department for students and asked them, hey, how about get some kids involved in this? How about our students being homeschooled? How do we get them involved? How about allowing them the opportunity to build something that's actually applicable to not only the work they do, but it's able to put on their resume for tomorrow? And that program director said, we're absolutely in. And then he went to the emergency management school and said, Homeland Security said, hey, what do you think about this? And he's like, oh, we're in too. So we actually have 2 capstone projects coming out of this that we will get for tooling, a long-lasting EAP in your pocket, right? So you'll be able to carry the EAP in your pocket, written by tooling, for tooling, by tooling, that students can look at. Now, the biggest question for me is I am a single-person department. I see that this is a problem, and I have no budget, because why would they give me a budget? So the answer is we have untold money for students. So I know where the money is, so where do I go? I go to the money, right? So part of that is really trying to understand the situation and how to build resilience not only there, but the other side of that is the idea is Tulane, who is one of many universities here in the city of New Orleans. We have a local responsibility to us and those around us as well, and we need to own that, right? As being a good steward and good citizen within the city of New Orleans and hold up our end of the deal as well. So as part of this is understanding both internal and external resilience and the role we play within our own communities. And that is how you get students involved to see how they can put out, and that really is the solution.
Thank you for those answers, very insightful. Okay, last question of the panel is, and this might be a big one, when you're thinking about campus resiliency, campus risk, preparedness, what keeps you up at night?
No, go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Bonnie, I appreciate that. I'll go back, my 2 things that keep me up at night are, I'll go back to the first thing that I brought up was some type of cyber attack against any of the universities, because there are depending on which community we're in, several thousand, tens of thousands of students whose information can get compromised, and being able to be good stewards of that and working with our team to make sure that that's protected. And secondly, unfortunately, our neighbors in Austin, that kind of lone wolf type scenario that happened in Austin recently, that keeps me up at night, because that's the ones that you can build a wall around it, you can do all the things that are out there, but somebody who is determined, who does not have any other indicators that you would expect, that keeps me up at night. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
I'm going to comment really quickly on this because people are going to say to me, I can get a shirt that says that seems safe. Because that's all I walk around and say, that seems safe. And oh my gosh, that's right. So we have 3 main campuses, DSL1, DSL2, DSL3. We have nuclear on 2 of our campuses. We have a gentleman who's building an MRI by himself because why not? That seems safe. And so part of this is just really, I come in and look at this and they look at me like I'm crazy. And because I don't understand this is not a risk. Like, we know what we're doing here as our students continue to do things otherwise known as human risk. So I think the real understanding risk is really kind of going down at the person level and saying, what are the 10,000 ways our students can hurt themselves? And, you know, ours wear underwear every day with hugs and walk around campus and can't pick up their feet. So I look at them and think to myself, we need to really help them make better decisions. And as people that are in charge, we need to kind of break the silos. And if I have one thing that I talk about at Great Mossy and here at Tulane is silos. We have a silo for a silo. We build a silo to ensure we have that silo and a backup silo just to make sure. So what we really try to spend time with, at least in the office that I work in, is how to have communication that's cross departments, up and down the food chain. Because once we start to understand why this matters to this and how this matters to that and where this leads to, then we can really start to understand how this affects us as a university. If we continue to look at it in its own encapsulation, all we're doing is pushing the risk down the road. So that's why I talk about the concept of risk versus resilience, because risk inherently means to isolate, because you're mitigating. You can't mitigate everything, so you're going to isolate your risk. That doesn't help us in the long term. What we have to really understand is the bigger picture, and then we can, I'm so sorry, bring it down to the student level or to that bottom level, as we said, the ground level, and build resilience from the ground up. So we have to look at things differently. So I don't have to have a shirt on the front that says, that seems safe, and on the back that says, welcome to Tulane.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Building off her comment on silos, and I guess my answer may be a little bit more personal. As much of a talker as I am, I'm also probably 10 times more of an observer. And in my work, I know that a lot of response and recovery is built around community. So when I sit on my campus, I may eat lunch in the union, or I may just walk in to get something. And I'm looking at the students, and I'm looking at how the students are interacting with each other, and I'm looking at different things. And I see the way students are, I don't know if it's technology, I don't know if it's phones, you'll see more people like this in their phone walking than actually talking, engaging, and meeting people. And so when I think about disasters occurring, I think about emergencies occurring, and I think about the role of community in that process, I think the thing that I would say keeps me up or makes me think is how can we really build or enforce a sense of community, just a shared responsibility for each other, right? I don't encourage or want anybody to have a hero complex and say, hey, something's happening, I'm going to run into the line of fire or until danger or anything like that, but just more so, how can you genuinely encourage students to be concerned with their neighbor or to be more present within each other and have that just stronger community? I can't speak for every student or every university, but that's something that I've thought about and just, it kind of has the wheels of my mind going, like, what can I do to really bridge that gap?
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll maybe add just a perspective that together, and that's our students' personal resiliency, their mental health. I know that working with these students, there's a tendency to not be open and just not communicate their mental well-being and their personal well-being. And I think in this idea of resilience, no matter if it's in a campus or a community, just the personal resiliency and mental health of our first responders, our students, our community members is so directly tied into the entire community's resilience that I know more work has continued to really progress that needle and show the relationship between personal and community resiliency.
Thank you, Seth. Well, this is going to end our panel, but I did want to give just a quick update. In Shreveport right now, we are currently having a water, I don't want to call it a crisis, but a water event where the city of Shreveport is almost out of water. They have started to divert river access to the sewer system, but I did want to give a kind of a nod to Dr. Heather Carpenter at LSU Shreveport. She is the executive director of the Institute for Nonprofit Administration and Research. And again, this is how higher education helps build resilient communities. She's leading the VOAD, the Voluntary Organizations Act in Disaster. She's the head of the VOAD for that part of the state, and she's leading the charge to bringing water and helping get these organizations organized to disperse water to the community, and is just doing a great job. And but again, it's all something that we can do because campuses are such great hubs to be partners to the community. So thank you, Jim and Bonnie and Dr. Allen and Seth. You have been wonderful. I appreciate your time, and I think we're going to take a quick break.
Hazard Reduction and Recovery Center, and a PhD student in agricultural leadership, education, and communication at Texas A&M University. He supports academic research initiatives on disaster strategic program development and coordination, working closely with faculty, staff, and university leaders to enhance disaster resilience. He oversees youth development and training efforts for increased dissemination of research and workforce development.
All right, thank you, Ryan, for the introduction. So, everyone hear me okay? All right, the first funny story I have is Camp Back. I have reached out by many track and field students, and I don't know if it comes to the surprise, but I am not a runner, so we have to kind of explain out that acronym a little bit. So, background on this camp was really developed in collaboration and through funding with the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine Global Research Program. The caveat to this is it would not be possible without a nonprofit partner, Charity Productions, who's in the Port Arthur area, in youth and youth development and education. Higher education is not very conducive to engaging youth, and that's where nonprofit engagement comes into play. It's really important in terms of connecting with the community, connecting with those K-12 school districts, and really giving access to the youth population that are interested in degrees in disaster and emergency management. I think we've all seen some type of diagram that looks like this, where we know disasters and emergency management take all different disciplines and different foci to really drive and solve some of the issues in emergency management. So social systems, built environments, the natural environment, and the more hazard winds, and then the technological systems that exist and impact disasters. Within this, our camp kind of focuses on four main focal areas of social sciences and disaster science, education, of course, public health with collaboration with the School of Public Health at A&M, and then urban planning with our department leading the landscape architecture and urban planning. So with that, we have three main focal tracks of our camp. So disaster management, those are for the students that are interested in emergency management and emergency first responders, and those type of non-public health first responder roles. And then community planning. For most people, they don't know what urban planning is. They don't know what community planning is. They don't know the impact that planning has on their community. So exposing students to that and those career opportunities is really impactful from both the workforce development initiative, but also just letting them know the opportunities to get engaged in their community. And then finally, we added the lens of public health because with this student population and youth, there are really a lot of them are interested in nursing and EMT and those first responder outward-facing public health roles. So really engaging with them and empowering them in those roles in our collaboration with the School of Public Health. So that's kind of our main focal areas, and a lot of the activities I'll talk about that we do in camp are really targeted at one of these focal points. So before we get into the activities that we do in the camp, I wanted to touch base on logistics because I know those are really important in the context of higher education. So our costs amount to about $1,000 a student for a week-long camp. So our camp is 4 nights, and that includes housing, food, activities, and transportation costs. Right now we work with highly vulnerable groups, so we provide transportation for them, teaching supplies, staff, a large component of the camp, and what I do is manage the risk aspects of the camp, and I'll talk about that a little more. We recruit primarily through nonprofit and K-12 school districts, parents to in-person Zoom informationals. We have websites, flyers that we get developed, and media and press awareness of our camp has really helped engage other school districts. For enrollment, there's a lot of risk components, like I mentioned before. For us personally, we have to have risk release, photo releases. We have an evaluation component, so our IRB we have to go through, which is a more complex process because we're working with youth groups, and then a really big thing is we learn that students want to know their roommate, and that has a big impact on them wanting to attend camp. So I'll talk about that a little more. And then health dietary restrictions. So I put all of this up there to just really show how comprehensive and time-consuming that working with you in this way is. I don't want to paint this picture that it's an easy, seamless process that is just really easy to kickstart and do. It's a labor of love. It is something that has taken us months in pre-planning and just engagement with the community. And then finally, our university requires one counselor to our age group. We work with older high school students, so 15 to 18, and actually in younger groups it's a 1-to-10 ratio. Risk training and some of our legal aspects are mandatory. Of course, at the university level, we're mandatory reporters, so you have to train students in that way. And then youth can't be alone, so one of the important aspects of overnight camps is we have to take guardianship over those youth. So we have to be a guardian or parental figure. The university or campus has that, responsibility for the youth. So a lot of good components. But this wasn't meant to scare anyone. I think when I listen to youth engagement presentations, it's like, it's great, we get to work with youth and we make an impact. But these are really important things to know and to think about when you're dealing with youth. So our first year in 2024, we decided to stick with a hazard or a theme for the camp to kind of just give students relevance. This year we should have done flooding because day before we went to pick up the kids, Hurricane Beryl hit directly in Orange, Jefferson County, Texas. So we had actually a large portion of students had to cancel their engagement because of that event. But for a majority of the students, we were still able to pick them up. And actually, the parents were like, take our kids. We're dealing with reconstruction. Our garage door is blown off our house. Take our kids for a week. This is like the best present ever. So I actually know of some pretty awesome youth summer camp disaster response initiatives. There's an organization that works with summer camp. So it was really kind of a relief to families to get these kids away for a week, that it was one less problem or one less person to deal with. So here's just an example of some of the activities that we did. I'm really trying to think about engagement and hands-on, experiential learning for students. So a caveat to this, we're translating all this curriculum into an open source way. We don't have it done yet, and I was hoping to have it done before this, but if I get everyone's contact information, I can share out all these activities that we have done. So we did a heat and health comment making activity. My favorite example of this was a group of students did a Wizard of Oz theme. So it was like the water going on the Wicked Witch. It was like, we have to save this water because heat is such an important issue. So it was really comical, and working with students, it was really engaging. For our urban planning, we used kind of a land use decision-making, construction assignment of paper so they could envision their community. We wanted students to reflect, and reflection is a really important aspect of youth engagement on who they are and who their community is. So one of the aspects of hosting a camp, you kind of lose out on some of the place-based education. So we incorporated that. Students took photos around their community. We brought them together. We were like, what are some of the shared aspects of your community? That was a really fun way, and even could be a fun way to engage with adults who might have tension or might not know each other very well. So really getting at who they are as a community and what are some of the challenges. Really the highlight of our camps, and this is one thing I'll say and repeat, is the professional panels and field tours. So we wanted to give students an idea of what it would be like to work in this field. It wasn't great when our emergency managers talked about how they should be paid more, but the students were like, wait, we can't get rich doing emergency management? And they were like, no, you can see a few of them lose interest. But for a majority of students visiting our local EOC, we got to tour Kyle Field and learn about their EOC operations there, which was really neat. And that was only due to our partnerships with our local campus emergency managers. So they made all that happen. We went to Teeks and saw a public firefighting demonstration. That was the highlight. Seeing flames, seeing firefighters extinguish those flames. A lot of these kids work and youth work in a community that is really dependent on the oil and gas industry. So that was a really great career opportunity that actually pays really well in their community, so they got to see that. We had a professional panel that I mentioned talk about career and educational options, and then finally our campus emergency management facilitated a really engaging game where they got to experience what it's like to share roles and have memorandums of understanding, and that was really great. So that, it's kind of some lessons learned from this. We were a little too focused on higher education. We were really initially drafted this camp to be like, we want these kids to come to A&M. If you're not top 10%, you're not getting into A&M. So really, for a lot of these students that we were working with, A&M wasn't an option. So we really reflected on that critically when we moved to the next year of our camp, which I can talk about. Here's just our schedule. So another caveat, waking up 7 a.m., going to bed at 11, 12 p.m., keeping students from ordering DoorDash and interacting with strangers on campus. There are so many things that you don't think about working with youth. I feel like in my brain, I'm just going through like a constant risk management, emergency management cycle the entire week. But you can see if this looks scary, especially for a kid that really only has a short attention span. So another example, like in lesson learned, is these 30-minute breaks, they were not enough. And I'm sure any K-12 educator knows that getting students in a van, transporting them to another facility, takes a little longer than 30 minutes. So a lot of lesson learned from that. And then kind of, you can see our activities and really a lot of the fun things we did. We went to like a grand station, which is a bowling alley. Like we wanted these kids to also experience and have fun activities throughout. So kind of our 2025 highlights. Fortunately, a hurricane didn't hit, but we still had a flooding theme. What stayed the same this year was really that last bucket that you saw. Those emergency management games, the professional panel. We expanded our student panel to have students that were in more professional degree programs. And they love touring Kyle Field. Who doesn't love to go stand on a ginormous stadium and run around and throw a football, which they didn't let us do, but they really wanted to do. But one of our things that we did this year is we had an increased emphasis on team building. So one of our actually engagement staff built this awesome curriculum around understanding your personal strengths. We split up the teams and they stayed in those teams. It was like a personality test, but they got like a pirate or a lion, and they got to really understand and reflect on what it takes to make a team and what it takes to have a strength. And by the end of the camp, they were really talking with each other like, I think you need to get up and present because you're a parrot. Parrots were the extroverted, of course, people. And maybe I'll stay back and think about it from the logistical side because I'm a turtle. So really just at the end, those students were able to reflect on their strengths and was a really great add this year. We expanded the building activity with Legos so it would be a little more interactive. Then we destroyed their Lego sets because it was a hurricane and then they had to rebuild. So teaching them some of those concepts of rebuilding. We expanded the emergency response training tour, and once again, was their favorite part of camp. They were knocking down doors, had fire hydrant or fire hoses and working them with firefighters. I think 3 or 4 of the students by the end of it were like, we want to be firefighters, we want to be first responders. There was this guy who was doing stop the bleed training, and he was just screaming at these kids, and they're like, ah, and just running and going crazy. So really that partnership, I think, has solidified the camp and allowed us to really think about emergency management, not in a strictly higher education sense that we need to get more students into emergency management degrees, but as a more holistic field of opportunity, getting them to become first responders, to be EMT, and explore those careers. We also had a stormwater infrastructure assessment. That was more research-based, but they got to go look at cracks in the sidewalk and go out into a high-income area of our community and a lower-income area of our community and really look at the stormwater assessments. One of my favorite highlights from this year is a student who was returning the second year. For the second year, we did a comprehensive planning, so if you don't know what that is, it's a plan that really envisions what a community is going to look like in the next 5 years. And we had them read their own comprehensive plan. We were like, what do you think is missing? And the student was like, there's nothing for me in this. They're like, it says, a huge bullet in this comprehensive plan is that we want to retain people in our community. But he's like, I don't see myself in this community. He's like, we have high crime rate, we have high poverty, and there's nothing to address that here. How am I supposed to envision myself in a community that doesn't support me? So really that was like, as planners and all the planning faculty were like, wow, I think a really pivotal moment for a lot of people thinking about these activities that we do with adults. If we're thinking about a community in the next 10 years, we need to include the youth that are in high school. We probably need to include the youth that are in middle school if we want them to stick around and have an impact. So you can see our travel times got a little bigger in this year, but really moving from the 2025 forward to 2025 schedule, the logistics just got so much easier. We already had a plan in place. We already had the risk management down. We already had everything signed and approved, so really we could think more about the impact. We did get rained out on the pool, and the students were really upset about that because it was the second year in a row we promised that they could go to the pool. I was like, don't y'all have a pool in your community? And they're like, yeah, but this pool could be cooler. And I was like, you don't even know what it looks like, but kids are really funny. I'll say personally, as I reflect on myself in this experience, is really having youth this is the most empowering and engaging week of my entire year. It keeps me fueled and it keeps me ready to go and just keeps me reminded of who this work is for, why we're doing this work. You can see we went to Sam's Club. But the other thing that we did this year that was a tiny bit different was we included not just parents at the closing ceremony. We sent it to their mayors, we sent it to their teachers. And these students were getting up into a field like a Zoom of 50 people and their parents all in the stadium, and they were articulating their experiences far better than I could ever articulate here. So really showing that value to the parents and the community why investing in youth is important. So we did an evaluation in both our first year and our second year, but since we had IRB, this is the impact and evaluation for the second year. So career knowledge increased. So most students didn't know what emergency management was. I think 10% of the students, those were probably the 10% that was returning, knew what urban planning was. But we saw at least a 30% increase in all career knowledge across the different careers that we were interested in. College interest increased. One of our kind of target areas moving forward in this camp is to target students earlier, because most of the time we're targeting the students right now when they should be applying for college, when they should be thinking about their grades and admissions to a place like Texas A&M. Yeah, this was a really impactful picture of students saying that they want to come to A&M. They wanted to play volleyball, Heather, but they wanted to also study emergency management and be a first responder. And then finally, hands-on learning. The research says this. It is not a surprise to me that hands-on learning is the most impactful, especially in this field where everything, you can talk about preparedness, you can talk about workforce development, you can talk about its importance, but until those students mimic saving a life, I mean, that's the impact. That's what students will remember, and that's what will change their mindset about their career. So some of our lessons learned, if you're interested in doing a youth camp like this, it's kind of hard to avoid hurricane season nowadays, but just prepare for that, and especially if you're targeting, no matter what area you're targeting, you would think, as emergency managers, you would think about that a little more, but we were like, oh, we're in College Station, we're a little more inland, we shouldn't be that worried about hurricane season, but Beaumont, Port Arthur is right along the coast. Activities took way longer than expected. We had to take many more breaks. High school students can eat. I forgot about that when I was a kid, but they can eat. They were ordering pizza at night and doing all those things. Additional time between activity, lectures had to be adapted, shortened, so kind of having that pre-planned. Okay, we have an hour-long activity. Let's make a 30-minute backup version of the same activity so it can still be impactful. Because if you try and do an hour-long activity in 30 minutes, it's just not as impactful. Weather affected outdoor activities again in 2025, so just reiterating that. All youth, it's not a surprise to probably many in here, it's not all youth are not interested in college. I mean, we have a changing shift from interest in college, so thinking about those careers. Explore diverse topic areas. Every year we're thinking about, oh, we should get geography faculty in here, we should get engineering faculty in here, and expand that camp. Incorporate on and off-campus activities. Really, we were able to do this with our partners. Engage the risk managers. There has to be a risk manager at your university. If there's not one, it would be really scary to do a camp, I'll be honest. We have like 5 full-time people, and I think we have 50,000 youth on campus. So, especially in the sports-related fields, they're already used to doing these youth engagement, these youth-engaged activities. So reach out to those professionals. You might not think that I didn't think that there were that many youth on campus, but when I heard we host 50,000 youth every year, that's as much of our undergraduate population each summer. Recruit early, anything you can do early. We wish we would have discussed long-term sustainability a little earlier. We got a grant to kind of kickstart this process, but now we're having to transition a little bit. And then staffing is always a challenge, getting students interested in working for 1 week out of the summer. It's just hard to do, but if you get students that are really interested in the topic and really bought in, they'll let their employers know as they're looking for jobs that, hey, I got this camp, I'm a counselor, I've been a counselor for a couple of years, I need this week off. And usually the employers will give it to them. So that is it for my presentation, but I didn't want to just throw even more information. I wanted to offer some time for Q&A. Kind of my role in the camp has both been manager of risk and logistics, but also coordinating the curricular components as well. So I can answer a lot of questions about working with youth in higher ed.
So my question is sort of about funding. I know you said at the beginning costs are on the order of $1,000 per student, and that you had some grants at the beginning. But I guess what advice or feedback would you give to people who were interested in starting something like this as well, relevant to the funding? I would say that
be as place-based as possible because that really reduces your costs. We originally designed this to take kids from a highly vulnerable area to come to camp and learn about these issues, but we're going to be transitioning to be more place-based in the Bryan College station area. And I'll be honest, we've been told that at $1,000 a student, we're one of the cheaper camps for a week that is being hosted at A&M. So it sounds like a jarring number. But also, we've been able to strategically work with foundations to keep engaging with lower resource youth as well. So I would say these last 2 years have been primarily lower income students, or having to transition that a little bit. So yeah, working with foundations has been great, but with a place-based program, you really can do, it doesn't have to have that overnight component. And that's probably at least $200 of that $1,000 cost. And we still get good rates on campus as well. I also, I guess he talked about, I was going to do a second presentation about Monopoly and the power of gamifying emergency management. And when you think about Monopoly, I didn't steal this idea, but there was another original creator out of Washington State that really showed me the power of Monopoly. And when you think about Monopoly at its core, it's a game that really reflects our society and societal dysfunction and the drive for consumerism and buying land and renting houses, and it kind of has those layers of our capitalistic society that you can mimic a disastrous impact on that and really show students in a creative way things like inequity, things like vulnerability that might not feel as important to them, especially as a middle school or high school student. But when they're playing Monopoly, they're passively learning. They're playing Monopoly as they're learning. So with that game, I can show just the slides right quickly.
While you pull it up, I did have a quick question about campus.
Okay.
How many students on average do you have in the session?
We have, our maximum capacity right now is 30 students.
30?
Yeah, 30 is a lot. We have another camp within our college that has 100 students. So.
Okay, so when we think about recruitment, how do you guys go about that? Is it first come, first serve?
This is a more unique relationship because they are also enrolled in a high school curricular program that uses, and I can talk about this a little bit too, FEMA IS courses, which actually can be converted to college credit. It's a pretty unique opportunity to train high school students in emergency management. The curriculum is there, and if they get enough IS courses, they can actually convert that into college credit for a pretty cheap cost. So we've been able to work with Charity Productions, who has been doing this for a really long time, to get students, I think it's about $100 per credit hour, which is in higher education a really cheap cost. So most of the students coming out of that program have anywhere from 10 to 25 credit or 24 credit hours worth that they can transfer into a degree program, which further incentivize their getting a degree in emergency management or related field, because that's where those courses will transfer to. So they actually have a foundation partner that is able to cover the cost of converting those credits. A really cheap way to train high school students with curriculum that already exists.
So we see the benefit of engaging students who already have a background or at least some interest in emergency management. Is there any thought process going into reaching out to students who may not have access to that program in their school? So, when we think about students who may be at some children's disadvantaged schools that don't have the
hard gap to fill without funding, and especially funding for a position. What comes to mind initially is working with curriculum for emergency managers. The emergency managers are there, they just might not have a background in K through 12 education or engagement. So if we're exploring the possibility of creating some curriculum to either give an urban planner or an emergency manager to take to these schools and be like, hey, I can actually get presentations now because I have the skill set or the curriculum to work with. So I think that's my best idea right now. But
we're all learning and going through it, and like you said, when you listed your, I don't want to say the things you're learning, so having to adapt or knowing, hey, I need more break time or those kind of things. I think it just goes into adding capacity, you're going to learn and keep pushing forward.
yeah, and I personally have a background working with camps and youth, so I would say even going into that, you still learn things because working as a camp counselor is drastically different than working as a camp director because the system's already set up.
I just wanted to say one thing about the Monopoly game, so you please share that with me, because one of the things that we did to gamify disaster preparedness was we do bingo. We do disaster bingo with any and every group we get in front of. And my colleague Amanda Smith, who is wonderful, created a bingo card with different elements that you would put in a disaster preparedness kit. And then we have, everybody gets to win. We have little swag items that you win in Yell Bingo, but from kids that are 5 to the elderly who work with ARP Live, everybody loves bingo, so I agree with you. So let's swap games.
So I'll just quickly walk through this presentation. So this would be the presentation that the facilitator would give. And then I'll kind of go back and forth. So just kind of the how to play. So you have your round 1, which is multiple rounds, maybe a 10, 15-minute introduction. Everyone kind of, if you're not used to playing Monopoly, maybe it's a quick catch up with your team to play Monopoly. And then a hurricane would strike, or I guess the first thing you would do is grab a roll card, which there's different people, and there's different people in society, so the way to mimic that is to give roles to students and a different income level, essentially, to students. So you would just have these different people in society, both businesses, college students, an emergency responder, a real estate investor. So you can kind of edit this based on if you want to really target, right? This is really targeted at the built environment, but you could tailor this to include more public health personnel or anyone else that you may see fit. So I also want to caveat that I got this game and was able to enhance it and tailor it with the use of artificial intelligence. So AI has a really great power to assist in gamification and curricular development. So I don't want to act like I did this on my own. Obviously, I took it and tailored it. But so each student would get a card, and that would be they would start playing Monopoly as a private business owner or a low-income senior. When I played with youth before, sometimes they started to act like, they'd be like, oh, give me your money. Like they would start to kind of embody their role a little bit more, which is kind of fun and unique. So normal Monopoly, just kind of an overview of how the Monopoly process works. And then a hurricane strikes. So then, similar to the cards that exist in Monopoly, you would get, like a low-income senior would draw the major flood. So each player with the developed property gets $20 per property. So that's kind of mimicking how homeowners get a little more assistance than renters, and especially in a more quicker way. So these are just an example of some of the disaster cards that we have and how it kind of impacts certain renters or homeowners. And the caveat to this game we play with students, you really want to mimic the environment. You say, if you don't have a home, you can actually start renting, which kind of breaks the rules of Monopoly a little bit. But when you land on someone's house, you have to pay rent anyway, so you can start renting from people and doing things like that. You also, it mimics roof damage, evacuation, and some different elements of the initial response phase. And then, so students would play this in multiple rounds to kind of start to see the impacts of a disaster, and kind of how that starts to play out immediately after response. And then to mimic recovery, we also did disaster response and recovery cards. So adding the element of whenever someone passes go is really important because some people get stuck and it takes them a lot longer to get around and pass go. So it'll start to mimic the maybe high-income landowner has passed go 4 times, but the low-income senior has not been able to pass go once. So they don't get that initial response or recovery as quickly as someone else would in a higher income level. So this is kind of how we initially set this up. Like there's things like a scam contractor donating to a nonprofit. Like the nonprofit, this is kind of mimicking some of what happened in Kerr County, where the nonprofit now has $2,000 that they get to decide, and that person would get to decide where to allocate those funds. And you can think of that person as the long-term recovery group or VOAP person. I really wish we could play. This room isn't as conducive to that. But you can kind of start to see how this might open students' minds up a little more to what a disaster response and recovery looks like, and what are some of the different elements that happen in kind of the schools reopen. So some of these are a little far-stretched. They don't exactly happen in society, but they're meant to mimic kind of when schools reopen, gaining employment back or gaining an education like that. So does anyone have any questions about this game? The nice thing about it too, Monopoly boards are pretty cheap. Say you're working with 24 youth, you only realistically need 3 Monopoly boards.
I'd like to share something real quick. It's along your lines. At the University of Oklahoma at the K-20 Center. That's where I was before I left academia. They have developed actually a game, it's an online game, can be accessed locally, it's free, and it's actually about emergency management. And you actually manage events. It tested the game before it went active. So it might be a good resource to look at in terms of the funding you're looking at. I know grants from the federal government. Tough right now, but they have Gear Up grants. The K-20 Center who developed the game used a Gear Up grant to fund all the activities. They develop curriculum along these lines too, and they develop all those games. They'd be happy to help develop curriculum. And like I said, part of the grant requirement is these games can't just be Oklahoma-based. They have to be shared, they have to be free and accessible, and they can help do these types of things. Thank you for sharing that, because in Louisiana,
if we could break down in leadership the understanding of starting young like this, because we're all going to retire, and if we don't prepare our kids what is going to happen to our state, to other states? Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing this. I really appreciate it. Because as a former educator, it's never too young to start. You're right, you know. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess, does anyone else have any resources that they would like to share with the group? I know you probably have some.
Oh, yeah.
I teach high school, sir, and I have a zombie apocalypse game that we play, where they take all of their ICS skills and their survival skills and disaster skills and try to survive the zombie apocalypse. And it has to change every day based on the decisions they make, but we use things like dice and flipping coins, much like Dungeons and Dragons. If you're a D&D player, it's very much like that. And everyone gets their assigned role, and who's the leader, who's going to be ICS, and then who's going to survive and who's not. And it takes about 3 or 4 weeks to get through. But it's absolutely so much fun to see the last person standing and the bragging rights that they take with them through the rest of their high school education. And I can send that out if anybody wants it.
I would also really quickly like to do a shameless plug that I'm trying to lead an effort in growing the next generation of emergency managers at our higher education collaborative. So I really think right now we'd have a great working group to start to share some of this curriculum and maybe have a Google Drive where all that exists, and really just be able to talk to one another and access a lot of the great tools that we've all developed. So if I'm being honest, it's taken a little while to get this group going, partially due to just lack of time, but I think using this maybe as a catalyst to get that going would be a great endeavor for our working group. All right, thank you.
All right, folks, I think that's All right, everybody, good afternoon. Hope everybody had a good lunch. Our next presenter for this breakout session is Dr. Angela Jean from the PSU of the University of Florida. She's an associate professor in public relations at Gaylord College of Journalism and Mass Communications at Oklahoma University. Her research focuses on understanding how the public process crisis and risk of information, the role of online discourse in shaping collective understanding and sense of community, and how to leverage communication to increase individual and community resilience in disaster events. Dr. Sharma received the NSF Career Award to study the construction and communications of social and transactive knowledge networks for disaster community resilience. Over a 5-year span from 2023 to 2028, she's studying how relationships and communication among nonprofits, community groups, and local government agencies can improve disaster resilience, resource allocations, and emergency management by enabling direct and lateral organizational interactions.
Thank you for the introduction. So my name is Angela Jean. I'm an associate professor from the University of Oklahoma. And so the study today, I'll be presenting as part of my career grant that looks at how we build cross-sector relationships to increase resource and knowledge flow among all of the community organizations. So how to involve communities, various organizations, nonprofit, for-profit, churches, faith-based organizations, as a part of the whole community approach to disaster response and recovery. And this is a side part of the whole research project that looks like that. And this part we specifically looked at how do faith-based organizations work in disaster response and recovery, to look at a case study from Oklahoma. Just a little background on faith-based organizations in disasters. They fill really important gaps, especially when there are former response delays, especially because they work very flexible and they have really rapidity in terms of decision-making, in terms of getting the resource flow and mobilizing, whether that's funding or resources in terms of volunteers into disaster events. And also that they're really trusted. So I think from the previous, a lot of the presenters, trust is a huge thing in community response, disaster response and recovery. And they were really the trusted venues in communicating with a lot of the community, especially vulnerable community. So these two pictures came from, I think, the Moore 2013 tornado. So I live in Moore, Oklahoma, and I have not personally experienced it, but I have a lot of neighbors who kind of lived through that. And according to a lot of them, churches, local churches, and faith-based organizations, whether that's BOADs or other faith-based organizations, nonprofits, they were pretty much the only people that they have seen on the ground during the disaster. Not necessarily had anything, they've not really were connected very much with government or state level government or even federal level governments. However, there are a lot of challenges when it comes with faith-based organizations in disaster response and recovery. Even though they fill such an important gaps, is that a lot of them are what we described as the emergent groups. They come out of nowhere during the disaster. They do fill important gaps, but also at the same time, a lot of them, especially the local nonprofits or local churches, they lack formal disaster training and preparedness. They also lack routine resource support, so they might pop up one day and, for example, feed the community, and then another day they may just go away unannounced. So which kind of caused difficulties from the formal response system. There are also some concerns in terms of faith-based organizations working with the government, in terms of for both sides, and they were having that fear of public backlash from either the faith-based publics versus the non-faith-based publics. So there are some challenges when it comes to combining the efforts.
Go for it.
Okay,
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the afternoon breakout session. I very quickly want to introduce Dr. Brian Mineker. Dr. Mineker is an associate professor, the associate department chair, and graduate program coordinator in the Department of Health and Kinesiology, sorry about that, at Texas A&M University in Kingsville. His research focused on sport event and venue safety and the impact of spectator sports on community health and safety. He currently serves the Region 6 Higher Education Collaborative efforts in leading the internal interest group focused on research, which is the Region 6 Research Consortium. He is the founder of the Community Organization Planning Research Initiative and Community Exercise Outreach Program, which provides planning.
So in terms of methods, this is a side project from a main larger project. And in this study, we interviewed around 15 faith-based organizations in a city in Oklahoma with a population over 100,000. We talked to the lead pastor or the community outreach person, or if it's a VOAD, we talked to the disaster service person. And we did a snowball sampling where we asked them to refer to people, other entities, other organizations who they work with during the disaster. We did the interviews in spring 2024, one phase, and then we did another phase in fall of 2025. And primarily, we asked about their disaster response and recovery activities conducted during the 2023 tornado that was in town. As well as any other smaller scale disasters that had happened before between these dates. Some of the main analysis we did was social network analysis through Eagle, to look at the Eagle network, as well as some semantic analysis, although that part is still ongoing. In terms of the people we interviewed, we have talked to both faith-based VOADs, as well as local churches, as well as local faith-based nonprofits. And in terms of denominations, so mostly in this project we looked at primarily Christian faith. We do intend to also include Muslim faith, so we talked to some of the mosques leaders. So it's still an ongoing project. So in terms of the Christian denominations, we talked to Catholic, Methodist, Baptist, Salvation Army, and some of the non-denominational, and I think there is one that's missing from this list, is Assembly of God. That's another denomination that we also interviewed. And I have really learned a lot about Christian denominations during this project, which I was really not aware of before.
You know, emergency management, we view it as a dance. But we have two groups. We have practitioners who are moving quickly together, responding to the immediate demands, and we have academic researchers. While we're responding to demands, we're moving slowly.
Cross-sector relationship building between government, nonprofit, faith-based,